Here we are.
Gratefully.
Yes.
It is the 13th day. It's a Friday.
And the 13th day.
Of June.
Mm-hmm. Do you know why 13?
2025.
Do you know why 13 is unlucky?
Are you superstitious?
I'm a little superstitious. But just some things you don't mess with.
Not super?
No. Just some things you don't mess with, but do you know why? It's biblically related, so I thought you might.
I don't know, actually. Or I don't remember.
Having the 13th apostle, if I remember correctly, is Judas. There's some other things.
Okay.
But the concept of 13, because it includes Judas, the ultimate betrayer, is why 13 is bad. Among other things, but that's the primary one that I have been told.
Good to know. Betrayer and confessor seem related to one another to me.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's fair.
So how are we going to stay on track today?
Well, that's a good start.
How do we...
Well, we can rewind with the...
We talked about...
Boy. Don't we typically start with expressions of gratitude? I got us off track, so that's my fault. I apologize. Just in a real Friday mood.
I think you got to scoot over here and put your back a little bit closer so that you're looking that way. Come this way. Closer. There you go.
All right. And, okay. That's fine. We're good.
I gotta check. So sit where you're gonna sit.
Is this fine? Like, am I...
I think you gotta go that way a little bit more. There we go.
Okay.
Okay.
Nope.
We're such rookies. Well, I'm a rookie. You're a great conversationalist, so I think that's how we stay on track.
Okay.
I think I didn't bring them in. So I did a 4-parter in the thing that you watched from earlier this week, where I said, will you please watch this and tell me if it's too weird or something like that?
Yes.
So the formula was, 1, the expression of appreciation. So I'm very grateful, Allyson, that you're willing to do this again.
I'm happy to be here.
The second one is a gesture of humility. So acknowledging that we stand on the shoulders of giants, like everything that we're doing. And then the third is, it's a 2-parter. So 3 and 4 are both confessions. The first one is a confession of fear. So I'm afraid, I feel fear that what am I most afraid of today? I can't think of anything in particular, so I'll go with the generic and say, well, so I'll say that whatever fear I feel right now has to do with, probably, pretty sure, not getting something that I want or losing something that I have.
I can't think of one example. I'm going to feel cheated if you don't have at least one.
Okay. I'm afraid that nobody cares.
Oh, well, that's just true. Nobody cares. That's just fact. Nobody cares.
So then the next part is a confession of hope.
You can make somebody care.
No, I hope. What do I hope? So if I fear that nobody cares, I hope to. Oh God, you're gonna love this. I hope to. I can't believe I'm gonna say this out loud.
Ooh.
I hope to be the change that I want to see in the world.
Gandhi, is that you?
I hope to care.
Huh. Okay.
I hope that I become increasingly careful, more careful.
Interesting. Okay.
What are you grateful for?
this is really going to turn you on your head. Okay. If you want, this is fresh off the heels of what you just said about that you're hoping to like get people to care, right? So
Well, I said I hope to care.
yeah, but you said you hope to be the change, so you hope to care. So doesn't that mean you hope
I
that
fear that others, I did say that I fear nobody cares.
Yeah, see? Okay. So I am grateful today for community. And I bet you never thought you'd hear me say that. Specifically, like I was at Taj Shabbat this morning, so Leia, her community around. And I was just thinking, like, as I'm driving off campus, like when I leave this one Friday a month, I am in a really good mood.
You sing in it, don't you?
Yeah. Mostly to try to get her to sing, and she doesn't. But I try. But it's just like the people that are there, like the I wouldn't say friends, the friendly acquaintances that I've made there. It's a good feeling that she is around people that care about fostering a safe and growth and challenge-oriented community. That being one of the foundations of Judaism, but that she's in like the best spot that she could possibly be, and it's a place that like I enjoy being, and that's pretty wild for me. So that's my gratitude for today. Is I'm grateful I have found a community that I have some interest in being part of.
Me too. So I think we agreed that we were going to try to we were going to anchor on one passage that I read out of or sent out of Plato's Republic.
Yes.
Do you have that? I forgot to
Probably.
bring. You want to read it out?
Let's see.
I'm going to check this one more time. Yeah, all right. You want me to read it, or you?
Well, I don't know. Am I reading the whole thing? It's a lengthy.
It's half a page.
I don't know. Maybe I read slow. you don't know.
I would love it if you would read it to me.
I can read it. You're gonna have to tolerate some butchered pronunciations. The homogeneity of numbers, which can apply to all things, permits them to reduce all the particularities in the world to unities.
Yep.
Sure. They tend to forget the questionableness of their own beginnings or principles and the natural heterogeneity. Am I pronouncing that right?
Sounds right.
Okay. Of the different kinds of things. They are forgetful of qualitative differences and hence of the ideas. As the pious men were hostile to the ideas because the ideas threaten the heterogeneity of their world, these competent men are hostile to the world. Such were the early philosophers who while watching the sky fell into holes, the men ridiculed by Aristophanes because their science could not understand man, the only being who understands. These two temptations are aided by two of men's most noble arts, poetry and mathematics. Both of these arts are necessary and useful, but both tend to emancipate themselves from philosophy and reinforce the hostility to it. In order to resist these temptations, a man's reason must be both daring and moderate. Socrates, in his reform of philosophy, showed the way in which these virtues must be combined. A man must be daring in his quest for the first cause of all things and in his refusal to accept the sacred opinions of the cave. But he must be moderate and not look directly at the sun for fear of being blinded and losing the distinctions among the various kinds of things. He must look at the reflection of the sun and the things it illuminates. That is, he must not try to apprehend being directly, but must try to discern it in the opinions about the various kinds of beings. Dialectic, the art of friendly conversation, as practiced by Socrates, is this combination of daring and moderation.
Friendly conversation.
A good conversation. I talk about Hegel a lot. That's his whole thing.
Okay. So what do you suppose we ought to converse on?
I believe we've got a range of topics that you have stored.
Oh yeah, but they're on the device over there that we're using to record, so I'm not sure. I'm not going to be able to pull that out.
That's
Sorry.
fair. Well, I think we had talked about transhumanism briefly, and that being a topic.
Transhumanism.
Yes.
Okay.
Based on like the last episode of Rafe and was it Dr. Zach Stein?
I don't remember for sure.
That sounds right. That's what I'm going to roll with. The transhumanism expert.
Okay. So what is transhumanism as far as you're concerned?
So the way that I think about it is how humanity will evolve to exist in an increasingly, I feel like digital doesn't really do it justice because that's kind of cut and dry. In an increasingly unphysical world, I suppose. So like in the movie that I was telling you about, it was transhumanism oriented. They were talking about like uploading human consciousness to some kind of cloud or some kind of robot or something like that. So transhumanism, the way that I think about it is like how does society and life change or adapt when we're living less in our own bodies and more in like a virtual sense.
So a whole bunch of things occur to me there. One, will you do me a favor and pull your hair back away from the microphone?
Is my hair, oh, yes.
And then, so digital, you didn't quite like the digital. You said you don't think it does it justice?
Yeah.
Calling it digital?
I feel like for me, I hear digital and it's just, oh, I can't touch it. I can't, like, there's not a tangible aspect to it. And with some of the transhuman conversations, because that video got me looking into a bunch of other things.
Of course it did.
As many
You're
of
welcome.
those, as many of those do. And it's more nuanced than that. Like, it isn't just necessarily like, oh, everything's in the cloud. Like, there's saying it's digital just kind of like wipes out the transition period and also doesn't do justice that there's still some element, like some physical element. Like, you upload someone's consciousness to something, for example, like that is hosted somewhere. Somewhere there is some physical element. And presumably that uploaded consciousness is interacting with something that somewhere downstream is a physical element. Otherwise, what's the point? Like, if you're just existing like in a cognitive cloud somewhere, like, to what end? Like, if you can't do anything, like that sounds, if you've ever watched Black Mirror, there's an episode of Black Mirror that's about that, where somebody gets uploaded and I want to say they get switched off or something. The device that they use to like communicate gets switched off, and then they're just trapped in this like void. And that's the rest of their existence, is in a void with no interaction of any kind and no ability to do anything. So that's when I say digital, I feel like it's makes it out to be more binary than perhaps it should be, or is fair to think about it.
These are digits.
Yes. But most people, when the average person, when you say digital, they don't think about the origins of the word or digits. They're thinking purely
I know,
virtual.
that's what makes it so fun.
Most people are not thinking about the root of the word.
Some do.
I think it's just you.
No, there's a grand tradition of philology, I think.
That's going like straight to what the word actually.
I think philology is.
Didn't you call me a
Yeah,
philologist at one point?
Philologist.
I remember looking it up and like, yeah, that makes sense.
I think linguistics.
Yeah.
So the contemporary term linguistics follows from philology. I don't
Yes.
know. I'm just
The thing that
I'm
I
just
read.
making stuff up as I go here.
I mean, me too. Which is when you don't care and no one else does, you can just do at will. It's the fun of absurdism.
Yeah. So you also said binary.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it makes it more binary than it is.
Yeah. Like, sorry, go ahead.
Well, binary is just two, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's either there or it's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 0 or 1. It's black or white.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I don't know where to go with that right
Well,
now.
well,
So we were talking about you were educating me on transhumanism.
Or at least my interpretation of it.
Yeah, so when people are talking about transhumanism, it sounds like they're talking about, based on what I'm hearing you say.
You can tell me I'm full of shit. If I'm wrong, just...
Oh, you're definitely full of
Well,
shit.
yes, but about this specific thing, I am full of shit, that's true. But about, like, if I'm just totally off base from what, like, your understanding of it is, I would love to know.
Well, trans. So here we go. I'll take apart the words and
Okay.
go to the sounds. So trans sounds like transition, transmission,
Transit. Yeah.
from here to there. So transhuman, that just sounds like death. It just sounds like I'm transitioning
So
from
do you-
being human to something else.
So you think about a transition as something that's more binary. Like it's going from one to the other. There's no or limited consideration given to the space in between. Space in between is whatever. You just care about point A, point B.
Well, the space in between is where, when I say life, the space in between is where life, that's where I seem to be all of the time. Is in between here and there. So does that make me transhuman?
No, I think the transhuman is your existence as it is translated to,
Nice.
that's pretty good, as it's translated to a virtual or like digital environment.
So how is this not a digital environment right now?
Well, we are physically in this interrogation room. So this part, this interaction right here is not. The recording, I think of it as like the in-between space. That like it's a recording of something that happened live, like physically, but the evidence of it is going somewhere that like other people, obviously who are not here, can be part of to some extent.
So to what extent can they be here?
Well, I mean, I don't see anybody else, so I don't. They can't really be like they're here after the fact. In theory, like if you show this to somebody and then they,
Like dead people.
if that's what you see, then
You
sure.
said after the fact.
No. Okay, that's fair. After the fact, as in like, after this recording is done.
Yeah.
Anybody who like I'm sharing it with then is like, Allyson, you were all wrong. That's not what it means at all. Anybody that engages with me on it afterwards, that's more of it's an interaction that's taking place because the transitional, that's not the right way to say it. It's an interaction that's only can occur because of this is recorded, right? So like the transhumanism part of it, I suppose, comes in with being able to share a recording of a conversation or a recording that somebody wasn't there for. So like our conversation, I don't want to say lives on, but is forever digitally cemented. So long after we're gone, somebody in theory could watch it and be momentarily part of our transhuman lives.
So we're transhuman.
Sure,
Okay.
you could be. Well, it also depends too on like in my mind, your social media presence. Like if you have one. I don't really. But if I did, like after I go, like there could be a whole bunch of profiles for stuff that are out there that like my digital footprint still exists and is still around. And again, to go back to Black Mirror, because there's lots of kind of transhumany type content there. If there is advanced enough technology at that point, it could scrape all my conversations, all of my anything, and create a replicated consciousness based off like how it thinks I would react and respond to given situations based on my social media presence. So even though I'm gone, I could be recreated to a certain extent. There's a Black Mirror episode about that that's still like, it will keep me up at night if I start thinking about it. It's really horrible. Somebody creates their spouse passes, and then they recreate their spouse's consciousness based on exactly what I just said, and it's too weird because they know it's not really their spouse, but like they get like a very human like robot that seems to have its own sort of consciousness, and she ends up locking him in an attic because she's like, it's too weird. But like he's not going to die. He's not a person, but like he has consciousness. He knows he's locked in an attic somewhere. So it's a very messed up episode. I think about it often. That being one of the like reasons that I don't like the concept of having an extensive social media presence. Like not that I think anybody would want to recreate me, but if they did, that they could, based on things that I have said in particular. Like chat histories or whatever, like that's very disturbing to me.
It's probably disturbing to the people in those chats.
It's disturbing to everybody I know. It's disturbing to me. It's disturbing to anybody that interacts with me to any extent.
I want to put a pin in the. You said something like recreate my consciousness. Mm-hmm. I don't think we mean the same thing when you say consciousness as I do when I say consciousness. And then I wanted to know, did you see the Blade Runner movies? Mm-hmm.
Well, I should say the first one. I have not.
You didn't see the second one?
No.
Oh.
I don't think so. I remember the first one pretty well. I think I've watched it a couple times.
Because aren't they called replicants?
They are. If you watched Battlestar Galactica, it's very much the same thing.
Okay.
The Cylons are the same. Like it's they have different. I think there's 7 or 8 models, but it's a model of a person that they've just like set out there. But they have like default personality settings and things. It's very much like the replicants.
Do you believe in Socrates?
I've actually haven't given it a lot of thought. What would there be to disbelieve?
Well, I don't know. I'm just wondering about you and your belief systems.
They're not great. I don't know. I don't.
Would you say that he has a social media presence?
Socrates?
Yeah.
One that's been like filtered through people's interpretations, but sure. Everything I know about him, I have learned on the internet. I would say in school, but like there's a good chance I wasn't paying attention. So everything that I've learned about him, I've learned on the internet.
No, that's not true.
So, where else have I learned about
You
him?
just read out of Plato's Republic.
Fine. But that was on a phone.
Okay,
I guess it was a picture.
technicality,
Yeah,
sure.
you know what? It counts. But I've learned it secondhand, I guess is what I should say. Like I have learned it through some other means, not like directly from him. Because like you could also say like a book, if you were to claim, like you were to take somebody's basic foundational concepts and write a book as if you were them, you could just claim it was them. Like nobody would know any different if they're gone, and it was like close enough to things that they said. Like I guess you don't have to digitally replicate someone. You could in other ways too.
Yeah. So where this gets really weird for me, seems weird, I feel like I'm maybe starting to get stabilized in it, is the sound. So person. Mm-hmm. So do you believe in the person? Like was there a person at a point in time named Socrates who did thus and so?
Right.
Who is somehow present with us now?
I know you're gonna like.
No, I'm not.
But okay, now we.
You do it.
You thought it before I said it. So you knew it.
You get technicalities, I get technicalities.
How long until Allyson says Jesus?
That's so good.
But it's true. I feel like I got baited.
You did.
I took it. But it's the same thing, right? Like that's
Seems like it.
it's like we don't know that he was actually he
Speak for yourself.
How do you know?
How do I know anything?
Okay, that's fair. But you're saying that you do know this. How do you know that he was an actual person and it wasn't just like a bunch of dudes in a trench coat like writing stuff that they thought people should do?
Bunch of dudes in a trench coat. They're like stacked up and they're like on top of each other.
Just a bunch of imps in a trench coat just being like, this sounds like a good rule.
That sounds way more plausible.
Well, right? So like,
No.
yes, it does. It just a whole bunch of guys that are like, listen, we would like to tell other people we think that everyone should live like this because it would just be easier for us. So why don't we write some books?
Because we're imps and we're getting beat up.
Right,
by all these lunkheads.
we're weird little guys. We're getting beat up. Let's write some rules. But like, you don't know that that's not what happened. Like, I could decide at this very moment that I'm deciding that's my biblical lore. Is just a bunch of weird little dudes that wanted things to be a certain way, that wanted to form society in one area of the world a certain way, and like we have no way to know that's not what happened. But you're saying that you do know.
So let's go over the 4 ways of knowing. Let's see. This will
Okay.
be fun and see if I can remember what they are. Do you remember what they are?
I don't.
So there's probably way more than 4.
Sure.
But I've been trained to. Well, I've been trained, and then I also noticed that I simply free associate. So have you ever heard that? I think Carl Jung called 4 the number of life.
That's ironic.
Sounds what?
It's ironic.
Why is that ironic?
In Asian cultures, 4 is the number of death. Like, to the point where they don't have like 4th floors in buildings. They take it very seriously.
I don't know. 4 ways of knowing.
Mm-hmm.
4 P's, propositional.
That's
So propose something, or something I can know through a proposition. So there's probably propositions. We're in a library here, and there's a bunch of books over there, and I'll bet you I can find a whole bunch of proposals about things that I have no lived experience in, that some of them probably are going to be true.
sure, some.
Okay, so that's a propositional way of knowing. I can read about it. I noticed that the simple operation of the processes of perception. The processes of perception: ears, eyes, nose, mouth. What am I missing? Epidermis, touch,
Yeah.
tactile. So that's perspectival knowing. I'm afforded a perspective. I've got a view
The
on
senses
reality.
to experience reality, sure.
And then there's procedural knowing. I spent a bunch of time, I don't know, but I've been told that I spent a bunch of time basically pouring water out of the cup when I was in the high chair onto the floor and dropping the thing and knocking it over.
That's how kids learn.
Yeah. Learning the procedures so that I can very gracefully.
Right.
So I know the procedure for picking up
From
a jar.
the
and
lived
drinking,
experience.
which is a participatory. That's the 4th. So
okay.
I'm participating in a real relationship with the jar.
Well, so Kierkegaard, if I'm saying it right, I could not be, I was looking in preparation for this today. I was looking at Hegel and Kierkegaard and why they don't like each other. And
Why don't they like each other?
well, actually, Hegel, I think, was far enough before that he wouldn't have known that Kierkegaard wasn't around or was around. Kierkegaard doesn't like Hegel because Kierkegaard, his assertion was that you can only know things through exactly what you're saying. Like his were lived experience and perception specifically, I think. There was only two, but they kind of aligned with the four that you just said. That was like, unless you can only know by doing and experiencing, and you can't theorize your way to knowing something. You can only know it by like it actually happening. But that you should be willing to accept that you can't know everything, hence the term leap of faith, which was, he didn't say those exact words, but like that's his concept, is that like you just kind of have to like decide that you're okay with something being unknown, and just taking faith that, in religion for example, taking faith that what you're being told is true and rolling with it basically. Whereas Hegel had and that was what the passage that you sent me reminded me of, was had the dialectic point of view, in that like any people that are willing to engage in a good faith dialogue can come to a well-informed resolution on the subject in question. That you can know things purely through theorizing with other people and like getting in deep with a given topic, but you don't have to experience it, you don't have to live it, you can just be part of a conversation in which that's happening, and you can know or decide to know something.
So I'm curious about that deciding, the moment of decision. So what is that?
I'm not clear on that part. It's not like a, hey, we figured it out kind of a thing. It's just that the way that I'm understanding.
No, I mean the particular individual.
When they decide that something is.
Yeah, what is that? So the deciding, there's a lot of work that's been done on will. And it's relentlessly gets called into question. Are you actually deciding anything at all?
Well, that depends on who you ask.
I'm asking you.
I don't think so. No.
So you're perfectly predestined.
No. There's no predestination.
Well then,
it's all
doing
everything
who's
is
the
random
decider
all the time.
besides George W. Bush?
And by extension, Dick Cheney. I think we think we're deciders in a lot of scenarios, but we're not. There are so many other forces around us that shape how we get to decisions that we don't actually decide anything. Like we think we do, but we don't.
So then why do we even say it's a thing? Like how did the word even come about?
Jesus.
Oh, tell me more.
Well, I don't know that it's actually Jesus, but there's the concept of, God. I think this is true. When people would ask, like, why did bad things happen to good people? And, oh, well, God gave people free will to make bad decisions, and he knows you'll learn from them. Like, that's how religion can explain a lot of unfortunate things that happen to people is, well, you had free will, and this is what you did with it. Like, it's your fault. But that's my understanding, is that the concept of free will is a religious construct. It's not based in any reality.
How about free won't?
So you've used it before, and I know how I interpret that, but what exactly do you mean when you say that? Like the decision just not to do things?
Yeah.
I believe in that.
So is that a decision?
There's a piece of it that in my mind would be it would have to be, right? Because you can only physically, a person can only do so many things at a given moment in time. And somewhere in your brain, like your body's prioritizing things on your behalf. Like if you're hungry, but you also need
all the time, like crazy. It's wild. It's astonishing to think about how much the body is doing.
How much your body is doing in the background. versus like the UI of the program that is like you're actually interacting with things. There are some decisions that we make, sure, but like they are, I feel like depending on what, I want to use the term field of consciousness, but I
love it.
Feel
Let's go.
very
Let's just jump right into the
fault.
field of consciousness.
This is not something I would have said normally. Well, I feel like there are people, you've said a couple things about this, but I think about it a lot too, but for a different reason. There are people that operate with the like, I can't do things, but if you push them on like why they can't do them, their reasons are just like very self-imposed rules. Like there's not really a reason that they can't, they're just not going to. Because, I don't know, the trade-offs are too high or whatever, whereas like theoretically they could. Like I could say, I'm gonna do a backflip, knowing full well I can't. Like I cannot do it. I could just fuck my shit up right in this room, but I'm not going to.
Come on.
I can't even do a cartwheel. But operating on the very basic level of consciousness where you're not really thinking too deeply about like your reasons not to do something, you're just not going to do them because somewhere in your brain you're like, it's not an option, but you haven't really given deep thought into why beyond there's an inconvenience. If you have like a next level of like a field of consciousness and you're able to see like, okay, I am making these decisions that are leading me to prioritize these things and that's why I can't do this thing, then it's a whole different mindset because you kind of realize how much you actually do have control over if you're willing to be uncomfortable.
Okay, you said a bunch of things there, and I think I learned something from you, but you're going to have to slow way down and go through it again. The last bit that you just were saying about the prioritization, the process of prioritization,
Mm-hmm.
Can you go back through that again, please?
Yeah, so if you're saying, anyone is saying that they can't do, I'm trying to think of a good example that won't like call out somebody that I know that might watch this. If you're saying I can't, okay, if you were to say I can't move to a different state because I don't like, because it would be expensive. And I don't know, like I'd have to move and the schools might not be as good or like it might not be as pretty there or whatever. Like it's all very like, maybe, maybe not. It sounds like it'd be a lot of work to figure it out, so I'm not gonna bother. Whereas if you're operating on more like a critical thinking plane, you can be like, all right, well, it's really pretty in this specific area and like natural beauty is really important to me. I can pick things that are essential to me continuing to be happy and find those somewhere else. But a lot of people, as soon as they reach that like immediate level of discomfort, they're just like, nah, I don't want to think about it anymore. Like I'm thinking specifically like my brother just did this, like just moved states, and it was very much like, okay, well, I know that I don't want to stay here. How do I shuffle my priorities to find something that will work? And like which things am I willing to give up? And what are the lifestyle implications for me if I give those things up? But a lot of people are like, I don't want to give anything up. I don't want to make any negotiations. I'm fine where I am. And so people get stuck, and then they get stuck being unhappy because they're not willing to make like a significant change to their lives. They're not willing to move past that first plane into like thinking uncomfortable things. Because a lot of times if you start thinking, at least for me, about your priorities, you make some uncomfortable realizations about yourself.
Yeah, me too.
And that's why I don't love being alone with my own thoughts. And if you make those uncomfortable realizations about yourself, it can open a whole like wormhole. And if you're not used to doing that, like it's very overwhelming. And like there's a couple people in my life that are going through that right now where they're just like, I opened the floodgates and now I have to like think some really uncomfortable things. And once you've let the genie out of the bottle, you can't put it back in. Like the thoughts are out there. You've opened that door, and like now you have to contend with it. You can't unknow it.
Yeah.
I think that was probably a longer answer than you were going for.
So let me see if I can pick one thing. You're talking about the exposure of my real priorities.
Mm-hmm.
can I say values?
Yeah, values is fair.
So the exposure of what I really value to conscious awareness.
Yes, and with to add that like some of those value realizations, I think you've used that term, are really uncomfortable. Being like, I've always thought I value this, but based on the trade-offs I'm willing to make, maybe I don't value it that much, and it's a weird and like uncomfortable thing to sit with sometimes.
Do you know why it's weird and uncomfortable?
It's so for me, like I'm thinking, as I've told you, I'm a big fan of cutting out friendships. But there are some...
Burn some bridges.
May the bridges I burn light the way. It's another Allysonism.
Yeah.
It's a good one. It's
definitely,
true.
I'm definitely writing that one down. Let me say it a couple times. May the bridges I burn light the way.
Yes. But sometimes there are, and like this has come up more recently, that there are people that I thought like I really valued their friendships, but like a few things have happened and have transpired, and like when I'm thinking about like changes in my life that I'm either like making or going to make, and I'm like, it's gonna like alienate that person, and I'm like, but do I care? I'm like, oh, maybe I don't like value their friendship as much as I thought, which then turns to maybe I don't value friendship as much as I thought, which then turns into maybe I don't value people as much as I thought, and then it's just a downward spiral from there. So I have to be careful.
So you actually do value people?
Some people. Depends on what they're gonna do for me. Because it's all about me. Except for when it's
I
all
thought it was
you.
about me.
It is about you. Unless you're not around, and then it's about me. But it's a weird, with the two people I'm thinking of in particular, it's just been very weird because it's people, literally one of them, we had the conversation of like, how would our friendship end? Like what would have to happen for our friendship to end? And we're like, I don't know. What would it possibly be? And now I'm like, oh, it's apathy. Which is not something I thought would happen. And then it's kind of like, okay.
Who's experiencing the apathy?
Both of us. I take it back. I am experiencing the apathy. She, I think, is experiencing jealousy. I don't know because she won't tell me.
Okay.
But that was the one, remember I told you a couple weeks ago, like I extended an olive branch and just kind of got it swatted away. And I was like, all right, I can walk away with a clean conscience. Like I did but it was just a weird day of me thinking about like, I don't value my relationship with this person as much as I thought I did. And like there are other things I kind of prioritized based on my friendship with her that like maybe I don't need to prioritize those things in the same way. And like how does that change my day-to-day life? And like it's just weird like when you think about like, okay, if I cut this person out, these are how all these other things are going to change. And it's a weird thought. Like, and it's not something like typically I've just lit a match and walked away. Like this is a little bit different. Like, fuck it. But this is a different thing. Just because it's like triggered, I'm attributing that to like a different field of consciousness, so to speak, of me being more aware of like how this is making me feel and how this is making me rethink some priorities, which also is part of the community value thing. Because like I didn't really realize that like as some of these closer friendships have kind of started to singe, that like the community aspect, I like the idea that I don't have to like be especially close with a bunch of people to feel like there's some level of community. Like that's just kind of nice, like in my mind.
Whoa. Something you said there didn't make sense. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be close to, but there's something about community. Are you saying because you know that there is a shared set of values, mm-hmm. you don't have to know the people very deeply?
Exactly, yes.
To be comfortable in their presence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that, which is a new, like, growing up where I did in the era that I grew up in, like very isolated, not a lot of people around, like the concept of community has not really been like a thing for me. Because like who would have had a community with there's nobody around? And the school I went to largely was Catholic school and like never really felt like I resonated especially well with anybody there. And so like the concept of like having a community that I wanted to be part of is very like, oh, that's kind of neat. Like now I get what all the fuss is about. But up until fairly recently, it's been a weird concept to me.
So you said another key word, I think. You said resonate.
Mm-hmm.
Can you say some more about that? What does that mean? You said the community that you were raised in, you didn't really resonate with the people.
I think we've talked a little bit about like gender roles and religion. And there was a school that I went to, very Catholic school for like three or 4 years, that had very defined rules and expectations for how the girls were supposed to behave. And it was at like, around 5th, 6th grade, like everybody's hormones start to hit. And it was a weird way to navigate like puberty in an environment where it was like, one, you don't talk about it at all. We're going to separate boys and girls completely, but we're not really going to tell you why. And there was a lot of weird shaming around like how girls dressed and how they did their hair, and it was very controlling, I guess. And it made me feel like I couldn't really relax, like I couldn't be comfortable because I was just doing something wrong because I was existing in that space.
Yeah, so what that's making me realize is I think what I'm realizing is that you said guilt or shaming, or did you say
shaming?
both?
I said shaming. But I mean, there's guilt.
Shame and guilt are somehow
very
related?
closely tied to me, yes.
Okay. So those... Do you feel when you say shame or guilt, or try to imagine a time when you felt particularly guilty? I'm trying to think if I can think of a time when I stole cookies or...
You have to go that far back? You can't think of something more recent?
I'm pure as the driven snow.
You might be, I don't know.
Guilty. What have I done recently? What have I broke a whole bunch of traffic rules today. I don't feel guilty about it.
You don't feel guilty about that. I mean, I've got expired tabs. I'm not feeling guilty.
You don't feel guilty about that?
No.
I feel a little bit guilty about not this is going to sound weird to say, but like my federal tax return, I filed an extension. I always file an extension, practically.
Wait,
always.
Why? Isn't that like literally your job to like know what's going on?
Just rub my nose in it. It's not my job.
No, but like it could be your job. Like you have the qualifications that could be your job, and you're like, nah, totally. I need more time.
Well, when you say it like that, it sounds pretty bad.
It is. It is pretty bad.
Are you shaming me right now?
Yes. You should feel a little ashamed.
I do. That's what I'm confessing.
Good.
I don't really understand why. It's like they're good. They probably owe me money.
Like the same day every year. You're like, who could have seen this coming? I need more time. Oh boy! Like It
gets better than that. I pay somebody else to do it for me.
Oh wait, you do?
Yeah.
But like literally, you have the qualifications to not only do this but do it well. So you're like, who could have seen this coming? I need more time, and I need to pay somebody else. That is several leaps of logic I couldn't see making.
I don't think there's any logic at all involved in it.
Well, somehow you've justified it to yourself,
You're
right?
making me cry.
Again?
From laughing.
At least this time it's laughing.
Such an idiot. Same time, every year. You have a whole year?
You have a whole year to think of. Oh boy. I mean, okay, full transparency, we also filed an extension, but I am also not allowed to do anything with numbers. There's a reason, but I don't.
I want to know the reason for that.
Well, one time we were selling a TV. It was a weird transaction, and like the guy came and gave us cash, and Avi was like, "Can you go in and count this?" And I'm going to help him load it into his car. And I counted it, and then I counted it again, and I was like, "It seems fine." And I told Avi, like, "Yeah, it's fine. It's what you said." And Avi comes in and counts it, and he's like, "Allison, it's like $150 short." And I was like, "Oh." He's like, "How many times did you count it?" And I was like, "Well, I multiplied by 10." He's like, "You didn't do it very well." So I'm not allowed to do anything with numbers. It's not the first time that something like that had happened. That was just like the most consequential, because it was like, hey, like you can't even count like a bunch of $10 bills. Yeah, so I'm not allowed. But Avi filed an extension, and I was like, why? Like, is there an issue? And he's like, no, I filed it because I thought something. And he's like, but it didn't make any sense. And he's like, and now, like, I don't know, we've got extra time, like, might as well take it. Like, but you're gonna forget. And he's like, yeah, probably. So maybe somebody goes to jail. We'll see. But you know what? Neither of us has the qualifications to, like, be professional tax people, and you do.
You don't even have to be professional. It's just like, it's a form.
But, like, if you're doing a bunch of, like, stock shenanigans, aren't there, like, multiple steps? I don't know. Like I said, I'm not allowed to look at the numbers.
Anyway, the sense of guilt and
Feel more
shame,
guilty.
do I feel it in a particular place in my body is what I was wondering about, because what I'm thinking about in the relationship between religion as such, religious communities that grow up around religious behaviors, because you know my axiomatic base is that I don't think anybody gets out of religion. Like, everybody's going to behave in a religious manner. Not optional.
I know that you think that.
So then I think you tend to associate the word religion with the natural progression way down the line. So if you just start in primordial state, you start in the wilderness, if you imagine what it's like to be living in a prehistoric sense,
Sure.
and you imagine what your behavior patterns would be, you'll notice, I believe, if you run the thought experiment, that some of those behaviors are obviously they're obviously a consequence of that acknowledgement that you were talking about before, that I accept that there are things that I don't know. In fact, I know almost nothing. And that great, vast reality that I don't know has a bunch of dangerous stuff in it that can come flying out of the dark and wipe me out.
Yeah.
And I have to contend with that. So the patterns of behavior around that particular aspect of reality is how I think of, that's what religious behavior is.
Is survival orientation?
It's the orientation to what Donald Rumsfeld and others referred to as the unknown unknowns.
Okay, so it's your way of processing, accepting, orienting yourself around that there are things that you don't know, and how are you going to behave, and that to you is what religion is. That fact is what gives rise to particular patterns of behavior that, as far as I can tell, the best word that I have been taught to label those patterns of behavior as an entire category is religious. What's an example? When you're saying patterns of behavior, what's because the things that come to mind for me, I don't think are the same things that you're thinking of.
This is a pattern of behavior. Look to the heavens.
Sure, but why would somebody do that? Like, if they have no reason to associate up from down being good or bad, why would they look up? Like, why would that be a pattern of behavior that would emerge?
Well, what occurs to me when you ask the question is that is if I imagine a night sky in a prehistoric circumstance, like it's like I'm looking up a scale of awe. It's like, okay, this I'm familiar with.
Okay.
Somewhat.
Oh, my mind went to navigation. Like, if people are using stars for navigational purposes, then that would be like, okay, that's fair.
It's because your mind works faster than mine. I think.
Let's
it's
not
like
get
you're
carried
always
away.
jumping ahead. Like navigation comes later, like down the process.
But you're thinking just like brand new Neanderthal chilling in the forest. It's just like, this is what I know.
Yep.
This is what I don't know. Okay.
Yep. Then it can go the other direction.
I was going to say, if you find a big enough hole, like, sure.
Well, yeah, you're going to be astonished, I think, if you start digging.
Yeah.
So
or if you
you're
see
going to come across
the edge of a
things, you're
cliff.
going to be like, oh, wow, how did that get there?
Yeah.
Yeah, look down a cliff. That's a good one.
Right. Okay.
That's
that makes
pretty
sense.
awesome. Okay, so those patterns of behavior then become habitual, and then ritual, and then you do that in community, and that becomes you start that a community, like you can just imagine. Well, people will start to label the different patterns of behavior, and they'll be like, well, this sucks sitting around on the ground. Let's get some pews, or let's at least give some carpets to kneel on.
We got too comfortable.
Something.
We got to kneel on a board.
Yeah.
But
yeah, so then it goes, so again, that's gone way down now. It's got too cushy in here, everybody on your knees.
But how does it go? So you said it goes from something to ritual.
Habitual.
How does something come from what is compelling someone or some being to continually look up? Other than like, looks cool. Like what's the push there?
Well, that's a good question. I don't really know, but what occurs to me when you ask is that people reliably die of natural causes, and people are naturally born, and the ones that are born don't know much. So the ones that are
so
there
the patterns repeat
basically say, they convey some way, somehow, this is a better way to behave.
Okay.
And you don't know any better.
And everybody around you is doing the same thing, so you're...
So then, so you get, the first generation expires. That second generation is going to continue to behave as they were taught to some extent. Well, what do you call that? Like, they didn't form the habit themselves.
Right. Okay.
Ritual.
Okay.
And then it works pretty well.
If you're getting a whole community to participate in that same ritual. Okay.
Yep. You start to get a force multiplying effect, and then you get things like cathedrals all of a sudden.
Yeah. So you've seen, or when you say religion, you're meaning it in a, not anything, but like any school of thought or habitual set of behaviors could constitute a religion. It doesn't necessarily have to be, I guess let me ask it this way. When you say religion, do the religions that you're referring to have like inherently a, I don't have a better term, a sky daddy like figure to look to? Or can a religion be something that is not necessarily tied to some kind of pinnacle of belief?
The qualifier for me is the fact that that most of reality is real and is unknown to me. Okay. So just because it's unknown doesn't mean that I'm not consciously aware of that fact. And I'm gonna part of my behavioral patterns at least are gonna be in real relation with that. That is the definition of religious behavior for me.
You don't have, part of why you've said that like religion is inescapable has been such a weird, I shouldn't say weird, has been such an automatic rejection for me is because I hear religion and I think restrictions.
Yeah.
Like inherent, like you shall not.
Yeah.
Versus these are the things that you are doing that create the religion. To me, it's these are the things you are not doing.
Yeah.
Which is probably Catholicism. Coming back. These are all the things you can't do. I didn't experience...
Isn't there, aren't the Catholics big on Beatitudes?
Yes, but I couldn't tell you what that is. Like, I remember hearing the words, but I don't remember.
I don't know if that's the... I'm more familiar with the yamas and the niyamas from the yogic stuff that I've practiced. So it's basically the thou shalls and the thou shall nots.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, but they focus more on the nots than the shalls.
Well, what about like the Ten Commandments? What's in there? Is there anything that it says do this? Thou shalt.
Yeah, honor thy father and mother.
Yep, there you go.
I think there's a couple others.
So those are.
Okay,
there's
so there
some
are
thou
shalls.
shall.
But the shall nots are a lot more imposing.
Okay, that brings me back to the free will, free won't thing. Mm-hmm. It seems to me that it's far more plausible to justify free won't, shall not, than it is to justify thou shall.
Well, people don't like feeling restricted, obviously. Well, okay.
People love being restricted.
People love being restricted. And if I remember correctly, there have been a number of studies that show that like people that have like the greatest life satisfaction are the people with the least choices. Like they have some choices, but they're limited. That the more choices people have, the less happy they are. Which I have found to be true. But sorry, go ahead. I lost where I was going.
You said that it's been shown that people who have more choices...
Oh, restrictions, yeah. So people like, they probably would not admit it, but they like having restrictions. They like being like, oh, well, I can't do that. Like, that's just, it's against the rules. It's just not something I'm doing. Or restrictions they can't really see. And people will say that they don't want restrictions. But when it comes down to it, they do. Like, people that complain about, like, what their neighbors are doing, like, a lot of those people will be like, if only there was some way to, like, make everybody mow their lawn. Well, there is. It's an HOA. But, like, you don't want them to tell you what to do, so you're against the HOA, but you want it to apply to everybody else. And, like, I feel like I see that a lot with other people, like, just in my life in general. Like, they rules for thee, but not for me kind of a thing. They love the concept of restrictions that apply to other people, but not to them. But that's not really how restrictions work. Like, they need to kind of apply to everybody. Like what?
Can't we have a sliding scale?
A restriction application?
Yeah.
I won't say the first thing that came to mind. Sure. I guess there's the sliding scale.
What's it indexed by?
I mean, the first thing that came to mind was gender. Like,
you're so sexist.
Being a woman's not a good time. It's not fun. Like,
you look like you're having fun.
No, it's not. I always look like I'm having. It masks the despair. Like when I found out I was gonna have a girl, I cried, not from like happiness, but like she's gonna have a hard life. Like, being a woman sucks. It's not fun. For lots of things that are just like inescapable. Like, it's not a good time. But there's lots of like societal rules that apply to women that sometimes apply to men, but not consistently. However, there are also societal rules that apply to men that do not apply to women that I see as being very, very restrictive for men, and that most men probably would prefer that things not be that way, but that's the way that culture has evolved. And so there are some men that take it too far in terms of like, I'm supposed to be, what's the term? I'm supposed to simp for my girlfriend. Or like
You're supposed to what?
simp.
Simp?
Yeah, I can't remember what it's. I want to say it's like simpleton or something, but like you're supposed to be. People on the internet also call them like golden retriever boyfriends. Like there are definitely groups of men out there in the wild that think that that is the expectation of women, is that they live just for that woman. And there are women that are like that, but like that's not a good expectation. Like nobody should have that expectation, but like that's where a certain part of society is gone. So sliding scales would probably be better, I suppose, but that's where my mind goes with gender, is that things are applied very differently in a sliding scale perspective.
So I think about demonstrated competence. So some kind of qualification scheme. So if you can demonstrate, I'm trying to think of a good example that won't get me in trouble.
I guess that's true. It's recorded. You have to be careful.
Well, I guess you can just say driving. So you go.
You've never seen me drive, so you don't know. It's fine. I'm not a good driver.
You reliably show up to work on time, so you must be good enough.
I mean, I make it, but like at what cost? Like to the people
You should
around
just stop
me.
talking now.
I have, nope, not gonna say that either. Okay, we're fine. I was gonna say I haven't hit anything, but that's not true.
Garbage cans.
That's one of them.
So licensing, qualification, accreditation programs.
Yes, like the charlatan programs we were talking about earlier. Professional certification.
Yeah, so if you're indexing, it's indexing to, it can't be just one thing, I don't think.
What do you mean? Like to certify that someone is competent?
To certify whether somebody has to follow a particular rule or not.
Okay.
So we were talking about, we were having fun with the everybody's got to follow the rules. It's like, here's your 10 commandments, here's what you got to do. No exceptions. So that's like one limit way of thinking about application of rules. I don't really remember how we got on rules. Oh, because on
How did we get on rules?
we started with religion.
We
started with okay, there's patterns of behavior that evolve.
Yes, okay, yeah, that's how we got here.
There's the unknown aspect of reality. And you're gonna behave, okay, and then so rules is pretty far down the line, but you could start with recommendations. It's like, okay, dear child, I recommend that you don't put your hand on the stove.
Right, yeah.
And then there could be rules or signage. It's like, don't put your hand on the stove.
We mean it, don't do it. Some kids just...
Yeah, so what's the point? The point is, at some point, it shades from recommendation into rule. Becomes codified some way, somehow.
Why do you think that is? I feel like your answer is going to tell me a lot about how
I
you
think
see
it has to
humanity.
do with energy conservation. It's like,
Huh.
it costs me a lot to say it.
Okay.
If I gotta say it twice.
We just need to be more efficient. If you burn your hand off, that's your problem.
Well, like how many times? Like I'm only gonna say it. Like it does. It takes human attention is by far and away the most valuable thing going.
My dad says the laws were made for idiots, so that's my motivational. That's what I think would drive it. Is like people are too dumb to remember that someone has told them something. But if there's a rule around it and they think there's a consequence other than just like hurting themselves, then they might be more motivated. Or it might stick in their mind if it's a rule that I don't put my hand on the stove versus like I might hurt myself. Because people will do dumb shit. So like
I do dumb shit all the time.
I mean, I do too. But there's not rules around it. Well, sometimes there are. But like, the first thing that comes to mind is there was a show I was watching that was doing a little bit of an expose on med spas, which I don't expect you to know what those are.
Good, because I don't.
I wouldn't think so. Although I don't know, you've got the lifestyle bag, so who knows? But they were talking about it's where women go to get like Botox filler, men too, but it's primarily women, and that there's very limited restrictions and rules around who can practice, who can open these med spas and how they operate. And as a result, a lot of people have died from people ordering like lip filler off Alibaba and have had who knows what injected by somebody that just, ordered it and called it a day. But it looked like they were licensed and it looked like a legitimate practice. So sure, but like people should know, in theory, like it's a risky move for me to go to somebody that like very well could have got their license online to like do injections, but people will do it anyways. And if there is not rules and regulations around how that person can operate, like anything could happen, and anything is happening. Like it's the Wild West. You have no idea that what you're getting injected is actually the real thing, or what you're paying for, or otherwise diluted. Like people know it's a risk. They in a high risk in some areas, and they do it anyways. Without rules and regulations to tell them like, maybe don't. Or like, people can only practice that really should be practicing.
I wonder how we should probably start. You know what time it is?
12:45.
And we started at 11:30?
Yes.
So let's aim to wrap in like 20 minutes, 10,
Yeah.
20 minutes, you think?
Yeah.
So if we were to try to track back on anything that we've done here so far. Oh, I put a pin in consciousness.
You did.
So you willing to tell me what you mean when you say
When I say fields of
consciousness?
consciousness, I can try to explain it. I don't know that it's going to make a lot of sense. I don't, in my mind, it's the level of, it sounds dumb, the level of thinking I'm willing to do about my own thinking. Like, we were talking about values, like identifying like, okay, this thing is my priority. And then the level beyond that being what value is trying to that priority. And then a level beyond that of being like, why do I value that? And being willing to like challenge why you value something. So like when I was talking about those friendships, like, okay, why do I value that friendship with that particular person? And like, does that make sense? Like, is it something that like, I have found with friendships, especially like with other women, that there's a lot, like you fill in a lot of gaps for why somebody might behave in a way that you're not expecting. Because a lot of women I've been friends with have been very passive aggressive. And so there's been a like, well, are they being passive aggressive, or is they just forget? Or were they passive aggressive, or was this just like a weird way to say something? Like, were they taking a stab at me, or is it meaningless? And I have found, like with these friendships in particular, if I start to kind of like drill into why I value them, and I start thinking about like, well, why? Like, I think that they're like really supportive, but like these things have happened. And if I think about like giving the benefit of the doubt at the time, or like not really thinking about it more at the time, like what are the other options for what that could have meant, or what are the other motivations that they might have for behaving that way, and like looking at it through a more objective lens, like, this sounds bad, but like, is this person worth my time? Based on, but like a lot of people are not willing to go that far into thinking about how their brain has decided somewhere along the line, maybe subconsciously, that like this friendship is valuable, or this relationship is valuable, or this person is valuable. So when I say consciousness, I'm meaning like drilling into the as far in as you can go about why something is relevant to me.
Okay. So I know that I believe that all life, and then by extension all human life, is intrinsically valuable. What do you think of that assertion?
Is intrinsically valuable. I think it all has the... Yeah, actually, no, I would agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's axiomatic.
Mm-hmm.
From there, everybody then is somehow valuable in relation with me.
That's a big jump.
Is it a jump?
I mean, I guess when you're saying valuable, like, is it in the sense that they are supporting the expression of the culture which you are most comfortable with? Or because they're supporting characters, or because like you are expecting that if you interacted with them it would be a valuable interaction, like you would learn something or you would be able to share something impactful?
Well, so I also tend to think that like there is no making or breaking of relationship. Relation is a matter of fact. You and I are necessarily related with one another all of the time, whether we're consciously aware of one another or not.
Mm-hmm.
And we already said axiomatically that all life, all humans are intrinsically valuable.
Mm-hmm.
So then you said, now I have to address time, I think. You said, this is going to sound bad, are they worth my time?
Mm-hmm.
You and I think differently about time too, because I don't think I possess any time.
Mm-hmm.
Time seems like a consequence of the processes of perception. So the experience of what we're referring to as time
it's something that we all can agree. It's like a reference point almost. Like we can all agree on like the perception of the passing of time, but we all are experiencing time and value time differently, in my opinion.
Okay, so so say yeah. So let's work with that a little bit if we
Mm-hmm.
can. So when you say value, did you say value time differently?
Mm-hmm.
So you and I, what you're proposing there is, it sounds like you're proposing that you and I are valuing this time
mm-hmm.
that we're sharing right now
mm-hmm.
differently.
Possibly.
So let's assume for the sake of the thought experiment
mm-hmm.
that we are in fact valuing this differently.
Mm-hmm.
This time, but it's not really time. We're actually talking about something else.
Like experience versus time?
So I would say the quality of the experience or the quality of the attention, which is probably not those two things seem like they're kind of two sides of the same thing.
I wouldn't say they're exactly the same.
So it's going to sound even harsher, but it's probably fairer to say the question isn't, is this person worth my time? Is this person worth me attending to?
Yeah, that would be the more accurate way of saying it. Like is because I think I experience social drain differently from you. Like, is the drain that's going to come from interacting with this person, like, is the juice worth the squeeze? Like, it may or may not be.
So that sense, so I'm thinking about a couple of instances, a couple of profound instances where I had people, friends, moving away from me. So it's the inverse of what you're talking about, where it's like, oh, they were moving away from me. It seemed like they didn't want to attend to me anymore. And they were rapid. They were like, these people were rapidly accelerating away from me.
Okay.
And so thinking about that from the other side, which is what it sounds like you're thinking about it from, it's like I'm making a decision to not, so there's free won't, not attend to this particular person who I have been friendly with.
Yeah, or that I've typically dedicated a certain quality of attention, to use one of your terms, but that applies here, like a quality of attention. Like they are used to having my full attention when we interact.
Yep.
Versus it moving to more of a partial or a not at all, versus the amount of time. Because like I think I've told a few people this before, like the closest friendships I have are the people I spend the least time with. Like it's a quality of the interaction versus just that we spend time around each other.
Say that again? The highest quality?
So I guess a better way, there are people, friends in a loose sense of the term, like we don't talk often, but when we do, they tend to be like very deep conversations. Versus people that like I talk to a lot, but they don't have, I don't think either of us has each other's like full attention. So it's not going to be what I would consider like a high quality or particularly high value relationship, because it's just never going to get past, I don't know, the first couple planes of depth. And some people just don't have that. But
so I've been playing with this idea. So I know what you mean, I think, or I have some sense of what you mean when you say depth. I've recently been thinking about it rather than of depth, more of the realization, or like the realization of quality through the interaction. So it's more I can just use you as an example. So I feel like when you and I have conversations like we're having now, my sense is that we are actually bringing, this is going to be audacious to say, so, but I'm going to say it. I'm going to say that I think that we realize, as in make real, a higher quality reality, both for one another and for those around us.
I think that's accurate.
In the workplace, I think you and I, we serve as an example. Like, I think people look at the way that you and I interact, and it has an effect. You disagree?
I don't disagree. I just hadn't thought about it that way. Like, I don't disagree, but I guess, yeah, okay.
Have I ever told you that you remind me of my little sister?
You have told me that.
Yeah.
But you also don't like your little sister.
No, I love my little sister to pieces. It's just that we don't ever get along. We haven't got along very well in this life.
Okay.
Like, there's been really sweet periods of time where we've gotten along really well, but they've been few and far between.
Is she combative?
Oh yeah, it's like.
Are you saying I'm combative?
Oh yeah. This is definitely one of those circumstances where it's like the unstoppable force meets the immovable object.
That's true.
It's that dynamic.
Okay.
So, but when two people can do that, when two people can encounter one another in that intensity, like that.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna budge. I'm not gonna budge either.
But can
and have fun with it.
Yeah, but can meet at that level and still, and like not make it really uncomfortable for everybody else, and like still be productive. And
I'm going to interrupt you and say, I think we do make people uncomfortable.
Well, sure,
and
but like...
we'll simultaneously demonstrate like real joy. And I think what that does is it discombobulates people's frame of reality. And
it definitely does. Yes, that's true. Yeah.
And they're like, wait a minute.
It seems like,
It doesn't make sense.
Right. Like, how can people interact like that and still have like a good relationship to each other? Like, how does that work? Which I know why, I think I know why, but that's a story for a different day.
Okay.
But I think so. Like, we probably make certain people, like, I can think of at least one person, but it's probably like, what? There are people that have been like, that's a really intense conversation that you just had. I'm like, they're always like that. But yeah, I think it does confuse people. Like, how can they go into conversations with that intensity and just like start from an intense point? Like, there's not a ramp up, it just starts there. But like, I'm not wrong. But how, like, these two people, how are they like existing in the same space and not like ready to strangle each other? Like, I think it's readily apparent to a few people.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna play a trump card here, and then I'm gonna let you see if you can tie it off. So I'm gonna also try to weave in the transcendentals here.
Okay.
So, and I want to tie it back. So what I think the proposition here is that one of the main reasons, if not the main reason, that you and I can just encounter one another most of the way through our lives here, or I'm over halfway through my life.
Why don't you say most of the way through my life?
Yeah, let me rescind that.
Yeah.
Let me try again. So,
at this point
somewhere
in our respective
in the middle
life.
of life,
Yes, there we go.
These basically complete strangers encounter one another in a work environment and can just all of a sudden tuck into those super intense.
It's the weirdo vibes.
So here's what's at the bottom of those weirdo vibes, I think. I think it's a commitment. I think it's a religious thing.
Okay.
I think it's a commitment of our ancestors to the transcendentals, to the true, the beautiful, and the good.
Okay.
And that's as generic as secular as I can get, I think.
Yeah, it is. And I'm trying to like tie it back in my head, and I am not. It's
interesting to me that the tie is a binding. So this goes back to what we were saying before about how people want to be constrained. They like to be constrained.
They won't admit it, but they do.
So I feel very grateful to be raised here in the United States of America and enjoy immense individual liberty. And I think one of the errors that I made in interpreting the culture that I grew up in has to do with understanding that individual liberty, or more generically freedom, as an ultimate good rather than an instrumental good.
Okay.
So, and it's been recently that I've been taught to refer to freedom, refer to individual liberty as an instrumental and not an ultimate good. And it's instrumental. I was also taught by Mr. John Vervaeke, unbeknownst to him. But I heard him say something like, I want my capacity to reason to be bound. So there's the tie, there's the constraint. I want it to be bound to what is true. And what I noticed this morning in the muse was I can also flip that and say I want it, you can say bound in the sense is that I'm bound for.
Okay.
I'm bound to discover what is true.
Right. Okay.
And then that kind of makes it romantic for me, because then it's like, oh, that's a journey. That's a voyage.
Yeah.
My capacity to reason
Should be a journey.
is bound to discover what is true.
Yeah.
And okay, so that's
A boundless pursuit, as they say.
oh, you're gonna confuse my metaphor. Don't do that.
Sorry.
Okay, so that's truth, and then the sensibility. So the processes of perception, I want them to be bound to what is beautiful, and then I want the my capacities, my ability to do real work, to be bound to what is good. I want to make life more gooder with my digits,
More gooder.
my ability to. Okay.
Huh. Good for who?
Ah, that's a story for another day.
Oh. Fair. Okay.
And you get the last word.
Well, now I'm focused on the good for who. It's fine.
Well, how would you answer it?
If it were me,
Yeah.
I mean, it's all about you. I'm sorry. So obviously it's what is good for you and then what is good for me. No, it's what's good for me. I know who I'm out for. Like, it's cool if some other people benefit, but I don't, whatever. They don't care. Tying it back to the very beginning.
I said I was afraid.
Yeah, they don't. Nobody cares what anybody's doing.
I care. Yeah, I feel very grateful that you're willing to do this.
I'm glad we could do this again.
Appreciate your careful attention.
Yes, careful attention indeed.